Hi, this is Harrison with the Luxury Pergola. One of the questions we get a lot is about screens, drop shades, some sort of exterior outdoor blind, whatever you want to call it, that goes on the sides of the pergola because people either see other people that provide them or they want some sort of protection from either the sun or from bugs around the sides of the pergola. And so that was something that we'd been working on here for the last few months. Finding a manufacturer here in the United States was a little challenging. Most of them were in other countries, and we wanted it to be here in the United States. And so we ended up finding someone that could do it and build it the way that we wanted to have it installed for everyone, so to be as easy as possible. They are manual operation at the moment. Motorized we may tackle at some point, but at the moment only manual operation because it's very easy to use. One of the things to note is over here on this pergola, you'll see we have a base trim down there. If you have a base trim for your pergola, you're going to have to figure out either if you want to remove the base trim to fit the screens or if you want to cut out the base trim for the tracks of the screens. Either way is up to you. In our case, we're going to remove the base trim before we put the shade up. So quick note, the things you need to build the drop shade before we get started. You will need a level. I highly recommend a 6-foot level, very useful. You'll need a dead blow, rubber mallet or a hammer of some sort. This is to put the faceplate on, the beauty cap at the end. You'll need a tape measure, makes sense. I would use 2 sets of sawhorses. You don't need sawhorses, but I would use sawhorses. So make sure you have, 1 set or 2 sawhorses. You're gonna need an impact driver. You will need a 3/16 drill bit, whether that's an impact driver, chuck drill bit, or you need an actual drill that's set up with a 3/16 bit. Either way, up to you. We will ship you the screws to actually mount the drop shade to the unit, so you don't need to bring any screws. So you also need to have both of the bits from bag A, the longer bits from bag A, the 5/16 and the 3/8 bit, because those will be used to mount this, the 5/16 to mount the track, and the 3/8 bit, the larger one, to take the screws out before you mount the drop shade. And you'll also need ladders, 8-foot ladders, to be able to actually attach the unit. I would definitely have 2 of those to put it together. That way you can have 1 guy on each side. We're going to start with unboxing it and going through what comes with the actual drop shade itself. So one of the things to note is it basically comes with the housing here itself. The fabric's already rolled up onto the housing, the cassette, and then you have 2 drop shade tracks right here. These are the parts that actually mount to the pergola itself, and then these just basically go into these pins or whatever you want to call it that come out of the cassette. So this is one of the tracks. Just to give you an idea, this is what we would call the cap. This one right here, you can see the difference between this track and this track. This one has basically a V cut into it, and that's because this is the starter or the top of the track. If you went over to the other side of this track, you would find that you had the same V over there. So this is top. This flat part right here, the fact that there is, basically no V in this vinyl track, that is the bottom. And then inside this cavity here, you'll find your face plate. This part right here will eventually get mounted, basically get hammered in to this space right here. I'd use a dead blow or a rubber hammer, a mallet of some sort, like this one right here, to make sure that you don't end up marring it with like a steel hammer. But that will end up closing out this cavity so that you don't see the screws that are going to go through this and into the post itself. So make sure that you take this, set it to the side. You're not going to need it until after you've built the unit. You put these in as a beauty cap at the end. One of the things to note here on this interior track here is where you're going to put the screw. It's going to go through this channel here, through the back channel, and into the post. I would highly, highly recommend pre-drilling through this wall before you run your screw. It's a lot of aluminum for a screw to go through, so I would recommend that. We will be sending self-tapping screws in a bag with the box. There's a score line down the middle here, that's center. Make sure when you're pre-drilling it, you're going through that score line, through that center, so that you don't end up making it difficult to put the screw or the bit in. For pre-drilling, use a 3/16 bit. That's what we're going to do. We're going to pre-drill these before we start measuring and everything because we want to make sure we have these laid out and ready to go. You're going to want to go 18 inches up from the bottom of each of those tracks before we start pre-drilling, because that post base, that stainless steel post base, you will not be able to pre-drill through that very well. So make sure your first drill is above 18-inch mark. 19 or 20 is fine for a start. You're gonna wanna pre-drill through both the front face and the bottom face. Please take the faceplate out of the track before you start pre-drilling, because if you don't, you will drill through the faceplate of your track. We're not immune from making mistakes, so that is something to make sure you don't do when you're doing this. So please take these faceplates out, set them to the side before you pre-drill. I'd space your screws about every foot or so when you're doing your pre-drilling. So again, start from the bottom, at least 20 inches or 19 inches up, and then on all those pre-drills, do them about a foot in between each. Also, when you're pre-drilling the top of the track, make sure you stay at least 3 inches down from the top, because again, you're just gonna go through this metal here. So stay 3 inches from the top and about 19 or more from the bottom. All right, so we measured the drop shade. This is 11 feet 2 inches. If you go on the website and you buy a 12-foot drop shade, it will be this size because it's built for a 12-foot side, right? So just keep in mind the drop shade is not 12 feet, but it's built for a 12-foot side. You'll probably have questions. You can give us a call if you want to make sure you're ordering the correct one. But a 12-foot drop shade, in this case, is this size, 11 feet 2 inches. My guys asked me why 11 feet 2 inches, and you're probably wondering that. It's because when you mount it, and you'll see when we do it, it's spaced out so that the track, once it's set, is flush here with the inside of the post so that it looks nice. That's why. So you have to take your number 14 screws out. On the top there, you've got 4 screws. You're gonna take that first one out on the inside. Same on the bottom, that first screw on the inside is all you're gonna take out on both sides. So inside, first screw, top, bottom, top, bottom. So as you put these tracks on, you need to make sure that the fabric is in the track. You know, you can fix it later if it gets out, but it's easiest if you already have it started in the track. So you need to use the crank on that side. You turn the crank rod counterclockwise to let the fabric out. So give yourself a little fabric, that way you have a lot of zipper to be able to get in the track. And then as you bring this track over, that way you can make sure that you get it started into that track itself, into that V, and then as it comes forward, you can get it slotted and the fabric's already started. It'll make it a lot easier so that when you set it up, it's ready to use right away. So we got the screen ready, we've got the tracks in on both sides. We have the bottom sides of each track right now setting on the bottom of each post where it's supposed to go. And then now we're basically just gonna lift everything up into place. We're gonna find which side is high. We're gonna mount that side first. And then we're gonna get a level on it, lift the low side, and pin it so the whole thing is level. But first we're just going to lift it up in place.
Oh yeah, QMI all the way, buddy. Got it. Want to go in same way?
Yeah.
It doesn't look bad.
Got it. So in our case, because we're in a warehouse, our unit is actually perfectly level. So we're not going to actually change it, but we are going to mount one side and show you how you would raise one side to get everything level if it wasn't. All right, so for example, you start at the top, you mount the top first. This side is now mounted. So if this was the high side, for example, and in order to make it level, we needed to lift this side here. Then at this point, then we would raise this using the level on top. It's heavier than I expected, so I was lifting it by hand. It's not gonna work, so I would use a little pry bar to pry it up to get it level, and then if you have to use blocks as well, you can get it level and then pin again at the top. In our case, as I said, the unit's already level, so we're just going to pin it on this side. As you move from top down to the bottom, check your reveal on both sides. You want to make sure that this is going to match your bottom marks down there. Now the way these are built, you should have a 5-inch reveal on the post at the top and at the bottom. Measure the top housing. In this case, it's 11 feet 2 inches. When you reach the bottom, the track from one side to the other should also be 11 feet 2 inches. I would highly recommend to use a level on the track itself. Make sure the track is level from the top to the bottom. and then mount the bottom that way. Make sure these tracks are level so that way you don't pinch that fabric or try and stretch that fabric as it comes down the tracks. And so this is the finished product. So this is again the 12-foot drop shade. Total size is 11 feet 2 inches. Mounts here, you can see this side here is flush with the post. Flush with the post over here, it stands out. All the profile dimensions you can find on our website. And then obviously it's manual operation. This one right here has a 95% solar mesh shade in it. So you just crank it counterclockwise and the shade drops. There is a felt weather seal on the bottom. It's about a 1/2 inch in profile, so if your unit slopes too much, you may end up finding that one of your, basically the bottom on one side hits the ground or hits the bottom of your track because you had to raise it to make it level before the other side, so you may have some slope of your concrete still showing. It's something you need to know. This is only a 1/2 inch. It only fills a 1/2 inch of that void, but as you crank it down, you can see the fabric as it reaches the bottom. Then you take this back out and you've got your drop shade. So there should be a good amount of tension on it. Again, I do not recommend having this down in really heavy winds because it's just not designed for it. You have essentially a sail attached to your pergola. So have it down when you're using it, obviously, but if there's a storm coming through, make sure you raise those drop shades. Also note on the level, you can see that the post bases do hold the drop shade up a little bit off the ground as well. So it's not a perfect seal to the ground. If you're looking for a perfect way to keep every small bug and critter out, these are not it. You will need a permanent wall built here. But this will give you that flexible space to be able to use it as you want, and especially as a sun barrier, it's perfect for that. So you'll notice here the color difference from the camera, you can't really tell, but there is a slight color difference between our bronze and their bronze, so the bronze of our pergola and the bronze of the drop shade. That is, you know, as close as we can get it from the manufacturer. The white and the black are really close. It is a textured powder coat, so there's a little bit of a texture to it. The screen itself is a 95% solar mesh, which means essentially it keeps 95% of wind or sun out of your space, only 5% gets through. In this space here, because I've got a light behind it, you can see through a little bit, but if you built this on your house and someone was standing outside in broad daylight, they would have a really hard time seeing in here. So it does a decent job for privacy as well. The other option here, other than the 95% solar mesh, is a bug screen. Now that's a really, obviously it's like the screens on your windows. So it's a really light screen, you can see through it really well. It does keep bugs out, but that is something to note. And if you're gonna build this on all 4 sides, because it's a manual operation from the outside, you're not really gonna be able to do bug screen on all 4 sides and still be able to get into the pergola, not unless you're climbing over the top. So just keep that in mind as well. If that's your plan, you're probably not gonna be able to get there with our product. Oh, and last note here on this crank arm, this is a powder coated steel. So it does or could rust if you left it outside year round. So make sure it just doesn't sit in the rain. I'd put it underneath the pergola itself if I were you, but just make sure it doesn't sit out there and get wet all the time because you'll get probably a little bit of rust around the top and bottom. So that's pretty much it. So that's the drop shade. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below, or you can reach out to us on our website. You've got our phone number on there. You can reach out to my brother or anyone else on the sales team and they'd be happy to help you. Do us a favor and subscribe. We've got more videos coming out talking about drop shades and the pergola, and that's pretty much it. So see you in the next one. Take care.